So here's the eBay R.A.W. turbo. You can see it's fairly nice, but really just didn't want to stick with the eBay turbo. This is what originally I wanted to go with, so I just went ahead and pulled the trigger on it. This is a Borg-Warner. It's a SX300. It's got the 60 millimeter wheel on it on the compressor side, and then back here it's got the 0.91 A over R. So one of the smallest A over R's that they have for this turbo, so I can get it to spool quickly. If you looked at this guy, it's actually a lot smaller. I believe this one's like a 0.7 A over R, which means it would spool really quick, but it'd run out of breath up top. So I decided to go with this guy. Plus, you know, name brand, good quality, you know, less problems I would have with this, as opposed to this. Who knows how long it would last. So I'm probably gonna do a video of rebuilding this turbo, and then I'm gonna end up selling it, probably up on eBay or something, and just kind of get it moving. But yeah, so got the Borg-Warner. Ooh. This one is oil cooled only, just like the eBay one was. Oil cooler up top, drain on the bottom. Has a different flange on the bottom, so I had to go take my downpipe over here to get a new flange welded onto it so that it would fit. It's got something called the Mammon flange. I don't know the exact measurements of it, but yeah. So put this one on the car. So here's the Borg-Warner on the car. Now you can see there is no clearance here with this intake that goes over the top of the valve cover. So I guess I gotta go to a different intake. So I'm gonna go to a front-facing intake. There's one that they sell where it'll actually take all of this and route it to over here, and then I can drop it straight down. Hopefully be able to get through all that mess with the piping, take it around the battery. I might have to go to a smaller battery, we'll see, to make everything fit. I want to keep the battery up front. So yeah, that front facing intake's got to go. So here we go. .90 millimeter throttle body. It's got the mount for the stock throttle position sensor. Got the fuel rail here, able to do the AN fittings at each end. And then this big monster. So it's got the spot for the idle air control valve. As well as for all the injectors. And it's got vacuum lines. So this one I'm guessing is for the brake booster. These other ones are for other vacuum lines, and I'm guessing this is another vacuum line right here. Which this one's kind of weird. Wonder if you can stick a plug in there because it's before the idle air control valve. So I wonder what that one's for. Like I said before, all the gaskets, mounts, and pieces there, as well as all the pieces here for the throttle body. So everything we need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the stock intake off, and I'm going to put this guy on, and hopefully this guy will finish up and correct my boost issues so I can get this car back to the dyno and get it tuned right. So here's where we are right now, getting the intake off. You can tell I've got this engine just completely taken apart. It's turned into a huge mess. So I got the over the valve cover intake portion up, the upper intake portion. So next I got to get to this lower intake, as well as pull off the fuel injectors and the fuel rail. So I'll get to that, and then I should be able to, from here, put on the new intake that I have and get that mounted in. Figure out if this power steering reservoir, if I'm gonna have to get one of those reload kits or if I can keep it where it's at. Really be a bummer if I gotta get one of those reload kits, but I mean, it is what it is. And then also over here, so I've got the Borg Warner turbine housing on. I got the new exhaust back on here with the new V-band flange, the Mammon V-band flange on there, and mounted up just perfect, connected up, everything was good. So I think it's because since this is a T4 as well, just kind of mounted up good. I'm doing it this way instead of mounting the whole turbo on, because it let me get to all these little bolts right here, all these little nuts, and get them tightened and torqued to at least 36, 37 foot-pounds. Now to get the actual compressor housing in, I'm gonna have to pull the what's left of the Dizzy off that I'm using as a crank and a cam angle sensor. I'm gonna have to pull this out, then I can put the turbine in, or the compressor in, and not put this back on. So yeah, I couldn't get it to fit. It just can't maneuver in here. There's not enough space, because if you look over here, that thing is pretty damn big. So we'll see what we need to do. Probably for me to do this, I'm gonna have to get the engine to top dead center, take a picture of where all the teeth are, so I can go back and reset it to make sure that I don't have to make any changes to the standalone ECU. All right. All right, so got the intake off, the whole intake. So there's the gasket. Had to pull a lot of this wiring up to get it out. I don't know how I'm gonna slide this thing in. All this wiring. Figure something out. So bad news, guys. That intake is not gonna fit over here. Looks like the only way it fits is if you take the engine completely out of the car and install it with the engine out of the car, which is pretty stupid. If you ever need to change a gasket, you gotta pull the engine out of the car. So I'm gonna go a different route. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the stock intake. I'm gonna get one of those eBay kits that bolts on top of it. I'm gonna take it to my the fabricator I use. I'm gonna bolt it down real nice and tight, use Loctite, and then I'm gonna have him weld it on so it doesn't come off. And yeah, build a front mount intake that way, and then I'll still use a 90 millimeter throttle body as well. So it's gonna take a little bit longer to put it together, but it'll come together. All right, so I ended up getting a 7M 2JZ GTE idle air control valve, because the flange that is needed that I put on the back of this guy down in here doesn't fit the stock one, which is the GE idle air control valve. You can see the flange is smaller here than what it is down here. So also too, ended up getting a new plug. It looks like, based off the research I've done, you can see here that the GE, the GTE, they all have the same idle air control pin out. So you can see this is the plug for the GE. It's the same as on the GTE. So what I ended up doing is I ended up rewiring it up, got it color coded over here. Wrote all the colors for all the pins here so I can make sure I pin it right. The reason why I'm rewiring it is because now that I'm going front facing, I got to make the length a lot longer so that it'll reach where the old plug was. So let's get this all put together. Looking here on the manifold, here's the flange. What you need to make it work is you need these items right here. So here's a check valve to make sure it only flows one way. There's an O-ring that sticks inside of here. And then you need the gasket. So I'm gonna put this all together now. All right, so I'm using the hoist to lift it up so I can get the intake in there because it's not clearing the brake booster. So let's see if I can get this up in there. It's gonna be a little bit of finagling and moving around. So here we go, guys. Got the intake on. I ended up having to use this hook to lift the car up pretty high and go through and slide this on because it was hitting back with the brake booster whenever I wouldn't. So I ended up getting it on, ended up hooking most everything up. There's still a couple things. Trying to figure out what I'm gonna do with this power steering relocate reservoir since I couldn't have the reservoir right here. So I'm trying to figure out where I can put it. Not a lot of space in here unless I relocate the battery somewhere else, which I'm not too happy about. Hooked up the PCV, hooked up the brake booster, got the catch can lines. I still need to take these and tap them into this plug. And then what I'm gonna have to do is here's the throttle position sensor plug. I'm gonna have to cut this and get it to route over here. It just barely doesn't make it, which really is just really kind of ridiculous. I'm gonna have to reroute my air intake temp sensor because I have that plug is over here, right here, because I had it over here when I had the intake running over the top, which it's not anymore. So quite a few things I still need to wrap up. It's looking pretty good. The coil unplug, everything in. I'm gonna figure out some way to dress this up because I don't like how all of these wires are showing. I think I'll probably put create some type of cover to go over top and at least hide most of these wires. So yeah.